All right, well, welcome to another episode of the Mental Health Janitors, where we help you clean up the mess in your head. I'm Sergeant Q. I am a disabled veteran and nonprofit founder and business owner. And with me, as always, is Jessica Bergens, who is also a combat veteran, and she is a licensed mental health professional.
Thank you, Aaron.
So today, we're going to go over a couple of things. First thing we're going to talk about is some trouble that's happening in the digital mental health space and how you can avoid some of these pitfalls. We're going to let you know what's going on out there so you can be more educated as a consumer. We're then going to go over some tools for your toolbox that you can put in your janitor cart that are going to help you clean up that mess that's in your head. After that, we're going to talk about some new advancements that are happening in this mindfulness space. So we hear that buzzword thrown around a lot, mindfulness, but we're going to break it down. What does it mean and how do you actually utilize it? Then we're going to go through my favorite part. No, not really. We're going to do some practical application, where Counselor Jess is going to go through one of these processes with me, the guinea pig, for your enjoyment. So you'll get to see these things. And in that way, when you go to counseling and you hear of these techniques and things like that, you already kind of know what they are and you're better prepared and it's not as scary. So I get to go through it first and you get to watch. And so we don't actually highly edit this part. We just go through it as if it was a real session. So you guys get to see real, raw emotion. I have no idea the question she's going to ask me or the process that we're going through. It's just going to be live for you guys to enjoy. And so Jess is getting excited. She made me cry last time. And so we were talking in the pre-show interview, like, are we going to start taking bets on whether or not Jess is going to make me cry on camera every time? So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
I can't cry. So my goal in life is to make other people cry.
Yes, that's what you want to hear out of every counselor you look for. Is that if they have a goal stated that they want to make you cry, that's
good cry.
Is that a bonus?
You know,
you pay extra for that?
We do my clients pay extra for that?
Yeah.
We're going to talk about reading the fine print.
We are. But actually, you know, crying is actually, we joke about it, but honestly, crying is very healthy. Think about it. Like if you get a cut or a scrape, you know, that blood comes out and then you've got to wash that out and scrub out all the dirt and debris and all of that stuff so you don't get an infection. Mm-hmm. And then it becomes worse. And so it's the same thing with our thoughts, feelings, and emotions. When we cry, it's a way to purify that. It's a way to release that emotion out. It's very therapeutic. It's very cleansing when it comes to talking about these thoughts, feelings, and emotions. You know, when we bottle it all up, we hide it. It's like just covering up that wound without cleaning it. And then it's going to cause us problems in the long term. So we joke about the whole crying thing, but actually super healthy. Yeah. And maybe we'll do a whole episode on the effects of crying. Okay. Yeah, that would be a great subject matter. Yeah. So, all right.
We can take bets on if you can make me cry.
Can I use physical violence?
No.
Oh, dang it.
I'm going to call my husband. No, I'm just kidding. That'll be fun.
Oh. All right, Jess. So we both work in this mental health space, and we've looked at all kinds of different apps that are out there, all kinds of different techniques. They even have this really cool brain stemming component that you can put on your head, and it stimulates different parts of your brain when you're walking through therapy. There's all kinds of really cool stuff out there. But what we wanted to talk about today is some of the dangers that are out there when it comes to some of the apps and some of the things that are out there that you can see advertised on social media. There's tons of them being advertised. So you really got to pay attention to the fine print. Otherwise, they can compromise your personal data. And there's some big players in the game right now that are actually dealing with that. One of them just got hit with a $7.8 million lawsuit because they were exposing people's personal data.
Malpractice or exposing people's personal data that you were explaining this to me that was able to then go in, these third parties were able to go in and market, what's the word? The medicine business.
Oh yeah. Pharmaceutical
companies.
The medicine business.
Yes. The medicine business. Yeah. So you get like, everybody knows, like, has Google or Alexa been listening to me?
Right.
Right? Like I'm thinking about, losing weight. And then all of my ads are like, well, lose 30 pounds in 30 days. I'm like, what is going on? And nope, it's actually, the reality is there are some platforms out there that are misusing their freedoms to sell your information. Right?
Yeah. So what they do is they take this information that you're putting into their app, and they're then turning around and they're selling that to a third party that's going to do targeted marketing to you. So if you're inside the app and you're talking about feeling depressed, then you're going to start getting these advertisements for depression medication, things like that, because they're selling this information to third parties, which are then promoting it to pharmaceutical companies so they can market directly to you that need the product that they have. But it's a breach of confidentiality. It's a breach of their HIPAA.
Yeah.
And like I said, they just got a huge fine. And it's not just one company out there that's doing it. There's multiple companies. We don't have to name them here. You guys can do a quick Google search. You'll see exactly what I'm talking about when it comes to them misusing your information. So just pay attention to what they're doing. And before you download any free app, download a mindfulness app, download a meditation app, just take that app name and throw it in the Google search and look up like scandal or scam, right? And then you'll find all kinds of information about that. So just be a very savvy consumer, especially when it comes to your mental health. A lot of us guard that information very privately.
Yeah.
And
it also reminds me, Aaron, of the younger generation and how they don't communicate with their voice. They communicate with text. And there's actually apps or counselors out there that provide text counseling for people. And I just thought of what an opportunity if we're just texting our friends about wanting to lose weight and somehow ads are popping up to lose weight. What about if you're texting mental health stuff? And so it would behoove you to do a little research before you enter that realm of kind of counseling. Yeah.
And so shameless plug for the app that we built, QActual. We don't sell any of that data. And actually, all of your messaging, like Jess just brought up, all of your messaging is actually encrypted end to end. So end-to-end encryption, it's stored on an AWS HIPAA secured server. And so we took a lot of those safeguards in play and put those in place. It really stifles us when it comes to scaling and growing on a massive level because we're not able to take your data and be able to manipulate it and then sell it off to other people who pay us a lot of money so we can scale. It's more slower sustained growth, but it protects your data.
Yeah.
And, I'm in this field, so I knew it was only a matter of time before that stuff started popping up. That's why we put so many safeguards in place with our app technology and with personal data. And so people are being held accountable now, finally, for violating that.
Well, and think about just what happened with us here. We had to take a break. I had to step out and take a crisis call from one of my clients that started with the adolescent texting me, hey, I'm giving my phone to my parents. I'm struggling right now. Please call my parents. And all that information is out there. And if we would have been able to communicate through the app, which once I get all set up to do, it'll be much safer for my clients to be able to do that, which is amazing.
Absolutely. So those are some of the pitfalls out there, guys. So just be very careful. A couple of years ago, there's another really large app development company. They got in similar trouble. But it was more around writing prescription medication virtually instead of seeing somebody in person. And so it seems very convenient. It seems very like, oh, this is very easy to do. But there are risks that come with that convenience. Like they got that ability stripped from them by the federal government. And the pharmacies actually said, hey, we're not going to fill any more of these because the doctors weren't actually seeing the patient. Yeah. It was just all virtual. And so there was no way for them to stay up on when that person ran out of medication or if they were having any kind of a medical emergency because there's a drug interaction. There was none of that follow-up was happening. So just be very careful with these new technologies that are coming out, new ways of seeing your doctor. Just be very, very, very cautious when you go out and do that stuff. It is very dangerous.
Sure. And post-COVID, right? Especially adolescents and children going through the COVID crisis and everything being shut down, we're just seeing massive amounts of social anxieties. And so it's already anxiety producing to go sit with a counselor. And so the thought of, well, I'll start from a screen. Sure, I see the comfort in that. I see how that could make certain people feel a little better. And I also myself prefer face-to-face because there's so many things I pick up on with my clients when it's face-to-face. And I mean, there's practitioners out there that have gone 100% virtual and they see all of their clients virtually, which is I'm not bashing that. I'm just saying, just be cognizant about why you're uncomfortable and can I push myself a little bit in this being uncomfortable so that I can grow? Because really just being uncomfortable is just a recipe to grow. So
yeah, I agree completely. When you feel that discomfort, that is a catalyst for growth, and that's where the growth happens. It's not staying in your comfort zone. There's no growth there, right? It's when you step out of that and you push forward.
Sorry.
You do the hard things.
Pause. It's her. I'm so sorry.
No, you're good. You're good. You're good.
Hi.
All right. Hey, well, welcome back. We had to take a really quick break there. That's what happens in this mental health space. You know, sometimes emergencies pop up and we have to handle them. So how was that for you, Jessica, having to just pause what we just did and go into counselor mode right away?
Thank you, Aaron, for asking. It can be pretty overwhelming, especially when it's a crisis in a client that I've gotten so close to, right? Somebody that, I really care for and have grown to care for the parents. And as a Christian counselor, trying to balance my trust that God is going to prevail and take care of them, as well as what can I do to help in the meantime, not being there physically, So just calling ahead and letting the Children's Hospital know they're on their way can help bring down the anxieties of the parents, just to know, okay, our counselor's taking care of us and she's here. And honestly, just having that work phone attached to my body at all times, even though it can feel overwhelming sometimes, it can be literally what saves somebody's life. And the fact that my teenage clients feel comfortable enough to call me, it just reminds me of why I'm doing what I'm doing. And I have lost adolescent 16-year-old to suicide, and it is incomprehensible. The pain of losing the kid and then coming alongside the family and walking them through that journey. And he wasn't necessarily my client. It was back when I was a teacher, in school suspension teacher, and he was one of my favorite students. He would say, I get in trouble just to go to Mrs. Bergen's class. So I don't know if that's something to be proud of, but good kid. Really, really hard situation. So that's another thing that we've talked last episode about, kind of what segued me into this career, right? Which was, I love veterans. I love helping veterans. I also love helping adolescents because it's just hard time. Hard time in everybody's life is those adolescent years. So thanks for asking.
Yeah, well, thanks for sharing that with us, Jess. That's what you guys get here, is you just get raw, real life. Like this is not a show. This is just our life. And we're just showing you guys what we do every day and how we try and help people the best that we can. You know, when I wake up in the morning, my constant prayer is that, I want to help as many people as I can for as long as I can until the Lord calls me home. Yeah. And so that's what we try and do each day. Yeah. And so it's great. 5-6 years ago when we met, I never thought that we would be working in the same field, in the mental health field. Two different aspects of the field, but we're still working in the same field. We all have the same goal. And so it's cool to be working together now on this battlefield, the battlefield of the mind, instead of the battlefields of Iraq. Yeah. So pretty cool.
And it's been 8 years.
8 years. Oh my gosh. Yeah. You're getting old.
2015.
I'm not aging at all.
Did you know me when I was pregnant with Autumn?
Yes.
Yeah. So 8 years. 8? She's going to be 8 in August.
Oh my word.
So if you knew me when I was pregnant with her. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Alrighty. Time flies.
Yeah.
When you're having fun.
Doing this stuff.
Or when you're miserable. Just kidding. Okay.
All right. So we wanted to give you guys some tools in your toolbox. And one of the things I love doing this, I do a lot of big presentations to corporate groups, veterans groups, and I love to give them tools. So when they walk away, they're like, okay, now I feel prepared for when I'm struggling with mental health or one of my friends or family are struggling. Now I have some tools available. So one of the things that I love to do is I'll give a big presentation. And at the very end, I'll say, hey, if you want to give me your email address, I'm going to spam you. All right. Just let you know. But it's going to be good stuff. All right. I'm not selling anything. I'm just going to give you free mental health tips and tricks and tools to use every single week. So every week you're going to get an email from me and it's going to give you that information. and you're going to be
I'm
able
not
to
on that
utilize
list.
that. You're not?
No.
Oh, you write the list. No, I'm just kidding. I'll put you on the list.
Thank you.
But every week you're going to get these tools, and now you're going to be better prepared when
exactly.
you or a loved one needs that. I tell people, don't unsubscribe, don't delete it, just archive it into a folder in your inbox. And then that way, when you need it, you've got this whole list of things that are right at your fingertips available to use to help people. And so just like you had to stop and help this person in the middle of a mental health crisis, we all sometimes find ourselves in that space. And it's very scary when we're like, I don't know what to do. What do I say? What do I do? I feel unprepared. So we want to help prepare you with these conversations going forward. So let's talk about the tool. What is the tool we're going to learn today?
Well, the tool we're going to learn today is probably my most popular tool, and it's very well known in the counseling industry. It's from the theoretical approach of cognitive behavior therapy, and it's kind of their bread and butter, and it's called the cognitive triangle. Okay. And so when we think of this cognitive triangle, and we're going to figure out how to put it up on the screen as I talk about it here, is we have 69 to 71,000 thoughts a day. So most of us could probably agree that most of those thoughts are going to be subconscious.
Right.
Automatic thoughts, intrusive thoughts, things of that nature. And so every situation in a day, from big to little to conscious to subconscious, triggers a thought. And that situation triggers that thought, which is the tipping point of our cognitive triangle. Okay. So we have a situation up here, triggers a thought. And then from that thought is going to trigger one of the bottom triangles of our cognitive triangle. Okay. One of them is emotions. One of them is behaviors. And we all change in which one we go to first from the thought. But if I were to give you an example of how this works, a good example would be I'm driving along. Some guy pulls up next to me and mean mugs me, right? Person A is going to think, oh gosh, what a jerk. I didn't do anything. Why is he glaring at me? Right. That's my rated G version of my angry thought. Okay. So, but that thought then is going to trigger an emotion of anger. I'm going to be angry or irritated or frustrated. Like, who does this guy think he is pulling up next to me, mean mugging me? Right. And so then that emotion is then going to trigger a behavior. And before I was saved, right, the behavior would be to cut him off, flip him off, whatever. And then my whole day, I'm kind of just like, ugh, right? Then person B, after being saved, here we go. This is a good example. So now I'm saved. Somebody drives up next to me and they mean mug me. And my thought at first is that intrusive thought, but I've learned in this process. So this new thought is, oh gosh, that guy looks really mad. I wonder what kind of day he's having. Probably not a good day. That is going to trigger a different emotion. And that emotion might be just neutral. It might be empathy. It might be, oh, shoot, did I cut him off on accident? Because I've been known to do that. And then look more internally at myself. Either way, that emotion is going to be much less damaging and create much different of a behavior, right? So then my behavior might be nothing at all. Just a neutral feeling, a neutral behavior, and just go on with my day. Or if I'm like super spiritual that day, I might throw up a prayer for the guy, But same exact situation, two completely different outcomes because of that initial thought and where I run with that thought. And most of us don't even realize that we're having these thoughts, right? And so the tool about this, so that's the tool is knowing is half the battle, right? So, okay.
G.I. Joe, here we go. Knowing is half the battle?
Oh.
Is
that where it comes from? Is that where it comes from?
Yeah. Joe. Millennials. I'm
Millennials?
Gen X.
How old are you?
You're a Gen X. I'm Gen X. You're a millennial.
I am like right on the cusp.
No.
Yes.
No. What year?
84.
85. You're way into millennials.
No, I'm not.
79 is the last.
No.
Yes. Back me up here, guys.
That's true.
Yeah, see?
Okay. Anyways, I'm really going to make him cry today.
See, I prove her wrong. She makes me cry. This is my life, man.
Okay. So half half the battle is knowing G.I. Joe.
No, it's knowing is half the battle, but it's okay. We'll get you there.
Now you've got me all. Okay. So now that we know about the cognitive triangle, folks, what do we do with it? Okay. And so now we're going to get into a list of what therapists and research show and name as cognitive distortions. And so we're going to read through these cognitive distortions. And there's lots of different cognitive distortions, but these are the main ones. And it's important to know that cognitive distortions are automatic thoughts that everybody deals with to a certain extent. We all have them to a certain degree. It becomes harmful when those cognitive distortions are playing a role negatively in our mental health. Okay.
So you say cognitive distortion. For the average person, we're like, what is that? And so cognitive distortions, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but that is that you're seeing things through that emotion and not necessarily the reality. Is that fair to say?
Uh-huh. And I mean, you're stealing.
I'm getting ahead of you.
So
sorry.
What does cognitive mean?
So like
your brain,
reasoning, good decision-making skills, cognitive, right?
And what does distortion mean?
It means that you're not seeing it clearly. It's distorted. It's off-center. It's off-kilter.
Yes.
Right?
So our thinking and thoughts are off-kilter or off-center.
Perfect.
For whatever reason, whether it's emotion and we'll dive into that. Okay.
So it'd be like, kind of like you're looking through your windshield and it's been raining and you got all those like beaded up spots on it. And so the road looks kind of distorted because it's got all that water on it. But you hit that wiper and it clears all that away and you can see clearly. I can see clearly now. The rain is gone. I'm not a singer, but no, Cool Runnings.
You didn't need to tell us you weren't a singer.
Cool Runnings? Watch this
Runnings. Movie? Yes, I love Cool Runnings.
Okay, I'm just making sure I know millennials watch that movie.
Oh my gosh. Jamaican bobsled team. I do it pretty good. Right.
Okay, okay, we'll get into cognitive distortions. I'll stop stealing your thunder. I just wanted to help you guys. If what is that term? What does that mean?
It's perfect. That's why we're doing this.
Right? Perfect.
Yeah.
Right.
You're the amateur.
I used a cleaning reference.
Yes.
Right? We love that. It's the mental health janitor.
Yes.
Okay.
So here we are. So much depression, anxiety, communication, PTSD, trauma, right? The list goes on, is centered around cognitive distortions. Okay. So what are they? I'm so glad you asked.
Yeah. What are they?
Wait,
can we cut that and go back? Okay. So what are these cognitive distortions, Jess?
Perfect. Thank you for asking, Aaron. We're going to start with one called magnification and minimization. Okay. It's exaggerating or minimizing the importance of events. One might believe that their own achievements are unimportant or that their mistakes are more excessively important. So one of those subcategories would be catastrophizing. And catastrophizing is something along the lines of like seeing the worst possible outcome in a situation. Okay. Another cognitive distortion is going to be overgeneralization. So that is making broad interpretations from a single or few events. Magical thinking. Magical thinking is the belief that acts will influence unrelated situations. Okay. Personalization is the belief that one is responsible for events outside of their own control. So we see this in two different ways. One could be if you have a narcissist mother and she's always upset and you're thinking, oh, if I just did more to help her, she would feel better, right? That's her being upset has nothing to do with you and you personalize it. Or it could be in a sermon and the pastor says something and you're like, oh, he's reading my mail. What did he do? He found out, and you're personalizing when really he's literally just speaking what God put on his heart. Something like that. Make sense? Okay. So that's personalization. Then we're going to jumping to conclusions. So jumping to conclusions is interpreting the meaning of a situation with little or no evidence. And so the two subcategories of that are mind reading and fortune telling. So mind reading is interpreting the thoughts and beliefs of others without adequate evidence. And fortune telling is the expectation that a situation will turn out badly without adequate evidence. Then we have emotional reasoning, which you kind of explained when you stole my thunder. The assumption that emotions reflect the way things really are. So one example of that could be somebody who is really scared of flying. Okay.
Right.
All the statistics, research, everything shows they're safer in that airplane than driving in a car, right? Facts. However, they're completely anxious the entire flight because their emotions are telling them that they're in danger.
Right.
And so they're emotionally reasoning with life. Okay. Then we have disqualifying the positive. So recognizing only the negative aspects of a situation while ignoring the positive. So if I get a 90-day employment review and I'm like nailing it, doing 5 out of 5 out of 5 out of 5, and then there's one little blurb that's like something I could work on because they have to write something, I'm gonna hyper focus on that one thing and forget all about the other things. Also, should statements here. The belief that things should be a certain way. I should always be nice. I should always be in control. I should always be friendly.
Speaking in those absolutes.
Would you stop?
Oh, it might.
The next cognitive distortion is all or nothing thinking. This is why I don't give him my notes before. I try not to. So the last one is all or nothing thinking. Those absolutes. Right. So it actually says absolutes.
I wasn't even reading.
I know that.
Notes. I'm not reading.
I know. So thinking always, never, every. Where do I get
always stealing your thunder?
Yes. Or, for those of us wives who aren't always perfect, always. That I didn't mean.
You're
that
never
for that.
picking up your towels off the floor.
Yes.
Right? Like that. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm telling my husband, you never think of me when he thinks about me all the time. It's just I'm emotionally reasoning. Mm-hmm. And that emotional reason goes to all or nothing thinking. Okay. So let me ask you, Aaron, reading those, not reading along with me, but as I'm reading them, did any of them register for you?
For me, I'd say discounting the positive things that I do. That's something that it used to be a huge burden for me, but now I've actually shifted my mindset around it because it's actually a catalyst now for me. And so it used to really almost cripple me to the point where I'm like, oh, I'm never going to get this to work. I'm never good enough. I'm never going to achieve these things. And so I have to actually stop when I start to get on that. I call that cycle stuck on stupid. Right?
Yeah,
I get stuck in there and I now can catch myself and I'm like, okay, hold on, I need to pause. And I just will speak out all of the positive things that I've done. And so I actually keep emails that people send me or letters that people send me that I've helped them.
Yeah.
And I literally will refer back to that. Like, nope, I've helped this person. Nope, that's not true. I've helped that person. I've had this success. I've, had these successful things happen. And so when a failure hits me, it doesn't hit me as hard anymore. Yeah. Because I have taught myself how to change my mindset around it. So when you spoke on that, I was like, yes, that's something that, and I still do it. Yeah. So it's nothing that I'm like, oh, great, I'm cured of this. I don't do this anymore. No, it still happens. I just now have a tool that I use, and I have a little, book that I keep these things in, so I can refer back to that on those low days where I feel like I'm not making impact, and be like, no, I am making impact. I'm reminding myself of those positive things. It's part of the negative bias. And so when we have a negative experience, it takes 5 to 7 positive ones. I think we talked about that last week, right? So we have to have 5 to 7 positive experiences just to hit neutral. Yeah. And so now when I have that negative hit, whatever it is, I have to go back and refer back to those 5 to 7 positive just to get myself back.
That is amazing that you just brought that up, because I have been doing research on negative thinking lately. Did I cut you off? I'm sorry.
No.
There is a really cool, and maybe this is a side note for maybe another episode to talk about, because there's so much research, really cool research about negative thinking and how we know that magic number of 5 to 7 to bring it up. And we know that magic number because of all the research that's gone into it. But once you actually read or watch or educate yourself on those researches, it's like mind blowing. It is. And there's so much of this that we're talking about right here in your book. I know. Cognitive distortions, just from more of a lay person verbiage than if I were to write a book, they'd be like, what does this mean? So
yeah, and that's really cool. That's where I'm jumping ahead of you. I'm like, oh, I know this. I know. Oh, I've learned this. Yeah. So that's great. That negative thinking though, it's a trap that all of us fall into.
Every person.
Right. Yeah. And it's funny because that's the way God designed us, to keep us alive. Yeah. Because if we go out and we're like, oh, hey, let's eat these pink berries, and then we get sick, the next time we go, we see those pink berries and we're like, ooh, no, that's the negative bias. Sure. So think about it this way. I'm sure everybody here has experienced food poisoning at some point, right? Mm-hmm. And so if you've experienced food poisoning, eating sushi at a specific restaurant, next time your friends are like, hey, let's go get sushi, you're going to have a physical reaction like, no, that's the negative bias working the way it's supposed to, right?
Yeah.
To keep us alive, keep us away from danger, from doing stupid things.
And the same is to be said with anxiety. Anxiety is good. It can be good to keep us from danger, to motivate us to get things done, to motivate an athlete to run faster, things like that. And and that's why these cognitive distortions are harmful when they're just kind of out of play or a little heightened. Or
one of the things I've learned is that so many people are going through life as just a passive observer in this meat suit that we have, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And things come and they hit you, they happen. You just feel like you're a boat that's just kind of floating there, getting tossed with the waves, right? And you have no idea. And so how do we take control of that? How do we become in control of our own life? We have to do it with purpose. We have
intentionality.
To be intentional. Yes, now you're stealing my words.
No, I just did a Facebook post at like 11 p.m. last night about intentionality.
I know, I read it.
Okay. So we are in my head. I get it.
That's why we work so good together. But being intentional with your thoughts, being intentional with your actions, being intentional, like, hey, this negative thought, just this negative intrusive thought hit me. Now I got to use this tool, being intentional. So having these tools are so important. So let's dig into that, Jess. Okay. I know that you wanted me to pick one of those because I'm sure you had something that you were going to talk about after.
Well, yes and no. Sure. I just usually when I read these to people, they either say, I can't pick one, every single one, or they have one that stuck out.
I see.
And I have never met anybody that was like, no, none of those are me. And so kind of to just bring the normalcy into it, if as I was reading them to our viewers, if any of them stood out to you, you are normal, not abnormal. Right. So that's also something that we need to do in the mental health field is validating people and normalizing the struggles that we're going through in our minds.
Yeah, that's one of the big things that I try and focus on when I go do speaking engagements is to just kind of level set for everybody in the room that, hey, this is something that we're all dealing with. And so we've got to talk about it openly so that way we can find solutions and help one another get through it. Because nobody's getting out of this life alive, right? Yeah. And so we got to work
unless you're
together.
Enoch or Elijah.
Well, yeah, but that's thousands of years ago.
Sure.
Why are you bringing up old stuff?
It's a cognitive distortion. No. So
we got to be able to work together. And so hopefully, you guys are getting some of these tools and you'll be able to work with your friends and family because we will never be able to influence them, right? We're never going to probably ever meet them or know them or their situations. But by you getting this knowledge, you're going to be able to influence them and help them understand these concepts. And so I talk about these, you got to have these crucial conversations with your friends and family so that way you can help them when they need it.
Yeah, I was just telling you earlier that I'm doing a group counseling on maladaptive coping skills regarding nutrition and health.
So maladaptive coping skill. So that means a bad way of dealing with a situation. That's stress. What that is, right?
A bad way of dealing with stress.
Okay.
Yeah.
A bad way of dealing with stress.
Yes.
Okay. Continue.
And so this group for learning about the bad ways we deal with stress.
No, you can use your words and
maladaptive coping skills.
I'm your translator.
Okay.
Right? Like if you're speaking English, I'll speak Spanish, and then the Spanish viewers can get it. So you use those words because there's going to be mental health professionals on here.
Sure.
Right?
That's fair.
And so I'm just going to translate.
Yeah. And so how many of us, have had a battle in our past of getting stressed and then eating a half pint of ice cream?
Yeah.
Or, either it depends on the kind of stress, sometimes it's a half pint of ice cream and sometimes it's tacos or chips.
Or chips.
Pasta. We're going down a road we should.
Hey, I did order tacos. We're having tacos for lunch, so now I'm getting hungry.
Okay.
But no, for me, it's chips and dip. Like
chips and dip.
Chips and dip.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but when you're stressed.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
That's your go-to.
That's my go-to.
That's a maladaptive coping skill to stress. Okay. And so in this group, this last week, we went over this stuff, this cognitive triangle and these cognitive distortions. And why I want to bring that up is because you said for the people that are watching and getting these tools, they share them with the people around them. And one of the young ladies came to me and said, at church was like, this class has been so amazing for me. After we learned it, my husband came home from work that night with one of these cognitive distortions. And I was able to walk him through. And I was like, what? That's amazing. And he was like, can I be a part of this group? And I'm like, no, it's just for women, but still maybe I'll do one for men. But it literally hadn't even been 30 minutes from our class, and she was sharing it and helping her husband. So
That's
it's a
the
really
goal
cool
right
tool.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. So you guys can do the very same thing. Take this information and utilize it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we've talked about the cognitive triangle. We've talked about cognitive distortions. And now what do we do with those two things? And I'd like to talk a little bit. There's so many things we can do, and we'll get into those over the years, months, whatever. But the first thing I want to draw your attention to would be a tool called mindfulness. Have you heard of mindfulness?
I've heard of it, but it's just kind of this general term, a buzzword really that I hear people talk about. But really there's no explanation to what that means.
Sure.
And so hopefully we can break that down today.
Sure.
And then afterwards, we're going to do the practical application part of that tool that we just discussed, right?
Perfect.
All right. So stick around for that. Don't tune out, because you'll get to maybe see me cry on camera again.
No, you're not going to cry. Okay, so the mindfulness piece, and how does that tie into this? So in all my research and experience with mindfulness has shown me that our brain is a muscle, right? There's muscles. Am I wrong?
The brain's a muscle.
Yeah. Right?
No.
But it's like a muscle. Like,
you can build strength.
Okay, that's what I meant.
Okay. So we'll redo that one. I'm like, wait, it's not actually a muscle. It's an organ.
Yes. That's what I mean. But you can build strength.
So just say the brain is like a muscle, right? You have to work it out.
That's what I meant to say, and that's why I got
it. Yeah, cool.
Okay.
I'm like, wait. Where? I'm like, did I miss something new tech or something? Okay, so we'll do that. Okay. Go ahead.
So mindfulness, and it is a buzzword. Everybody's talking about mindfulness, and it can get kind of creepy. So I'm just going to talk about, Christian mindfulness for me, in my experience, is there's so much scripture on renewing the mind and think of things above, not on things below, things that are on the word of God, right? And so I have so many tools of mindfulness that is helping me build the brain organ, right? So there's different parts of our brain. We got our frontal cortex, brainstem, and they all have their roles to play in our body and our function and our cognitive functioning as well, right? And so I think about it as, if I want to build my biceps, I'm not going to go to the gym and do leg presses. I'm going to go to the gym and I'm going to work my biceps. And so mindfulness has taught me and my clients to go in and build certain pathways and neurons in your brain. And so what mindfulness would look like for me would be sitting down and doing a mindfulness body scan meditation with scripture. And so what the mindfulness leader or person walking you through is going to walk you through paying attention, very specific attention to each part of your body as you walk through a body scan, and throwing in scriptures along that whole process. And then also realizing that mindfulness is a practice. And so what does that mean? That means you're not good right away. It takes practice to get good at it. It takes practice to build that organ and those pathways and neurons and things like that. And so the first time you're like, oh, I suck at this. This is not for me. And most people feel that way at first.
Is that why doctors have a practice? Because they're not good at it at first?
Sure, I practice.
So, I had bad timing.
Edit that. Okay.
Put it in the blooper reel.
Mm-hmm. So as you're doing the body scan, and if it's a good person leading you through it, or you learned the right way, my mind, I'm sitting here, I'm doing the body scan, I'm to my knee, and then my knee hurts because I hurt it skiing. So my mind goes to that skiing accident. And then the person leading the mindfulness will say, and if your mind has drifted, with grace, bring it back. And it's actually helped my prayer life immensely. Because how many times do I pray and my mind wanders and wanders, and I'm like, what the heck is wrong with me? I can't even, all of our mind wanders.
Right.
Even when I worship sometimes. And I just, with grace, bring myself back. And that's been building so much strength in my brain to be able to go back and catch these, I'm showing you, catch those thoughts when they come, because I've been strengthening my brain.
Right.
So we can somehow in a link share some of the mindfulness meditation.
Oh yeah. So we'll put the links in the description.
Yeah, some of my favorites, if you want to give them a try, and practice. Again, just don't try it once and say, oh, I wasn't very good at it. Practice. I mean, if we have time, I'll tell you a really quick story. I went to this intense outpatient program in Chicago for PTSD and traumatic brain injury. And I'm in this cohort of 9 other like super tough Marines, SEALs. And they put us all in a group of like similar experiences. So I'm not talking to somebody about something that they haven't gone through.
Mm-hmm.
So we're all in this cohort, and they pick your cohort. And so I'm in here with a bunch of super tough guys, right? And I'm like super out of place. But we get to mindfulness, and it's voluntary. And they say, trust the process. We have to participate in everything. We get to this mindful piece, and every single one of us is like, what the heck are you guys making us do? We got to meditate. What is this? Right. And so each day we do it because we signed that we would participate in everything. Right. And by like day 6, 7, we're like, when do we get to do mindfulness? Right. Because we were forced to do it, and we actually learned to get a lot out of it when we did it. So that's my story with mindfulness.
That's mindfulness. And so it's a concept that I write about in my book as well, this idea of mindfulness. And I relate this body scan, this mindfulness piece, to doing a function check, which in the military is something that we're all familiar with, right? You put the weapon system together, you do a function check to make sure that all the processes are working before you have to engage. Mm-hmm. If the weapon malfunctions in the middle of a firefight, you have to do an immediate action drill and then another function check to make sure it's operating properly so you can get back in the fight. And so that's how I relate it to people. Is it's a function check for your brain-body connection, because your brain and your body connect and they work together. And if one of those is off kilter, distorted, then the other one's going to be off as well. The other one's going to compensate for that. Yeah. And so you're going to be off balance all the time. And so doing that function check, that self-assessment, being very cognitive of what is happening, the thoughts, feelings, and emotions that you're experiencing. Mm-hmm. When you feel anxiety, doing what I call stop, look, and listen. Mm-hmm. So stop what you're doing. Look at your surroundings and listen to your body, and it'll tell you a lot. And so in the military, this is a tool we used to use on patrol. We'd get to a danger crossing like a road, and we would stop at the danger crossing. We wouldn't just run across it. We would stop, and we would just look at our surroundings. Did we see any troop movement? Did we see any ambushes, any tripwires? Did we see any danger in this crossing? We'd look around, and then we would sit there for a moment and just listen to our body. Do I feel uncomfortable here? Do I feel uneasy, and why? Yeah. Sometimes our body, our subconscious is picking up these little things that our conscious mind isn't aware of. Exactly. But they're little triggers in our environment that are telling us this is not a great space. Yeah. And so if we got to a danger area, we needed to cross, and any one of those things was off, we stopped, we looked, we saw something we didn't like, or we felt something we didn't like, we wouldn't cross there. We would move farther down and cross in a different area. Yeah. And so I take that same approach to when I go into a crowded room, or I go into a meeting, or I'm somewhere shopping or something like that, and I start to feel anxiety or uneasy, I do that function check. Yeah. I'm very conscious of my surroundings and how I feel in that area, because maybe there is an immediate threat, or maybe there's not. Maybe it's just a perceived threat. Mm-hmm. And that's where this mindfulness really comes into play. It's just, in my mind, what I think of is just being aware of your thoughts, feelings, and emotions in these situations. Yeah.
Well, and even if we bring it back to cleaning, right, as well. If I'm thinking about my 7-year-old, right, she's like Tasmanian devil, like I was, and you walk into her room and it's just like, and she's like, I don't even know where to start. Mom, it's so messy. I know that feeling. So you got to stop, evaluate everything, and have a plan of how, because you can't just walk in there and what do? You start. Well, my husband, because he's ADHD, will tell her, okay, the first thing I want you to do is just pick up all your shoes and put them in your shoe bin, and then come back to me and I'll give you the next step. Right. And then the next step. And the next thing you know, her room is clean and she doesn't have any idea how she did it, but it's cleaning your room. It takes steps, intentional steps to get it clean. Perfect.
Yeah, perfect. So that's mindfulness. You can go on the internet and find all kinds of different jargon and reasoning behind mindfulness. But that's our approach to mindfulness.
So I would like to do a practical application with you on maybe one of these cognitive distortions.
Let's do it. All right. I'm a willing participant.
Okay. Do I need
to sign a release?
No, maybe. We should look into that. Everybody heard you say you're a willing participant. I have no gun to his head or knife to his throat.
Is this a HIPAA secured server? It's going to be on here.
You're going to start getting ads for function check weapons. I don't know. So if we go back and give you a second to look over these, you know what? Don't even look over these.
All right.
This is what I want you to do.
Perfect.
I want you to think about the last week. and a time that you felt hopeless or sad or overwhelmed.
Just one?
Mhm.
Okay.
Or angry.
Okay.
Okay. Tell me about it. Tell me about the situation.
So we're on our scaling journey for the app and trying to
Mhm.
get that in the hands of as many people as we can.
Yeah.
And I keep running into these administrative roadblocks or these bureaucratic roadblocks,
Okay.
I should say.
Okay.
And so I feel like I'm just not scaling fast enough. I'm not able to articulate my message properly to have people understand what this technology can do to
Okay.
help them.
And so, what was the specific situation that made you feel hopeless or sad or angry? Was it a phone call with somebody that didn't purchase the product or sign or?
I don't know if it's the government.
Okay. Organization.
Yeah, I can just say it's an organization.
There was an organization.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, there's an organization, really large organization.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been trying to get this in front of them for 3 years. Even when I was just
Mhm.
first developing it, like, hey, help me develop this so we can get this out. And they weren't
Mhm.
interested. Then I built it. I've worked closely with them. And then I find out that they got approved to use technology in what they're doing. And they chose not to use me, but to build their own based on everything that I had done to help them. And so it was incredibly frustrating to learn that they got approved to use technology in the mental health space. And they decided instead of using my stuff that I've been working with them for 3 years, they're just going to build their own based on the work that I've been doing. So it was incredibly frustrating to deal with that.
Yeah. And what did you feel in the frustration? Like, did it stem? Think about the situation and think about your thoughts that followed it.
I felt manipulated.
Okay.
I felt angry.
Yeah.
And I felt vengeful.
Yeah. Did you act upon those feelings? Did you notice?
No, but I wanted to. I really did.
Sure. And I'm not saying intentionally act. Did a behavior follow that frustration? Were you angry with your wife? Were you short with your dog? Were you did you eat chips and dip?
No, so when that happens, I get very I start to isolate.
Okay.
And be like, oh, okay. So this is what happens when I try to help people.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just not gonna help people anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes it harder for me to help the next person.
Yeah.
Because I just got burned by that organization.
Sure.
And so it makes me very cautious of like, no, if they want this stuff, then they're going to have to pay for it.
Yeah.
But that's not the right answer, but that's how I feel. And so those actions do come out. Mm-hmm. And my team actually had to correct me on it. And they said, whoa, we said we wanted to help people. Yeah. And, this other organization that has nothing to do with the first one, the second organization, they don't have the funding to be able to utilize this, but it's a tool that could help them. So we should just be helping them. Which is funny because that's what I've told them from the beginning. But once I got burned and once I got hurt, then I was like, you know what? No, I'm not going to help people unless they're willing to put up some money. Because I've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars of my own money to develop this technology. And then why am I going to give it to somebody for free?
Yeah.
And so because I got burned from that first organization, it made me very... bitter is not the right word, but jaded, I guess.
Jaded's a good word.
With helping this next organization who had nothing to do with that previous situation, knows nothing about it. Yeah. And they're just trying to help adolescent teens. And they're a small startup, nonprofit, and they're just trying to help. And so, my team had to be like, hey, pump the brakes on this. Like, what's going on?
Sure. So if you were to go back to the situation of this organization rejecting you and all the emotion and effort and sacrifices and money that you've put into this life-saving app. Okay. And the thoughts, right? So we have two different people. We have somebody who initially thinks the thoughts that you had, which then pulled you into emotions of, well, it's frustrating, it's saddening, it's makes me angry, lots of those, right? That in turn created the behavior of subconsciously maybe eliminating somebody else from getting the effects of that app, of this life-saving app. So if we go in and let's think of what an alternate thought would look like after you were rejected from this organization that should have chosen you.
Well, the alternate thought would be it's their loss, right? And just the Bible says if they don't receive your message, knock the dust off your feet and move to the next town. And maybe they'll be more receptive of your message.
Sure, and it's easier said than done, right? But think about the behavior or outcome, the action of thinking that way, because think about this startup company who has adolescents and pausing, how we just had to pause, right? I have a real life child right now who wants to take her own life. And if you allowed your emotions to override the logic of that, and nobody was bold enough to tell you, hey, let's get back to the source of this, that we want to help people. How many potential lives that you could have saved could be lost?
Millions.
Yeah. And so, though I also don't want to devalue, you have so this is where this cognitive distortion gets a little messy for me, because I don't believe it's a cognitive distortion. I think you were seeing things clearly. However, with the organization that rejected you, right? They shouldn't have done that. However, just because we have a right to feel a certain way doesn't mean it's beneficial. Okay. And so walking through that process and thinking of picturing, I'm picturing my sweet 13-year-old girl that's at the ER right now. And what if she was a part of that organization that didn't get the access to the app and she lost her life when it could have been saved if we got our emotions in check? Does that make sense? Yeah. So in the future, when you are rejected, how are you going to try to captivate that initial thought and redirect it?
I really, and this is something literally that I was just working on, is understanding this concept of mercy, which is what God's really been teaching me is mercy. And there have been several incidences. That's why when you ask me like, oh, choose one, I'm like, one, because I could think of a half a dozen that happened to me over this last week where God was really teaching me to have mercy for others. And just because this organization, rejected what I have, all the people who are part of that organization, they didn't reject me. It was just these few people at the top. Right. And so it's unfair for me to judge all of them based on
that's so good
the actions of a few. And so what really, like I said, God's been teaching me about mercy. There's a gentleman that I know that I really like this guy. And I was really struggling. And he had told me some very personal things about himself. And it made me see that demographic of people in a whole new light. And I was like, oh my gosh, here's this guy who, I love this guy. He's a good friend of mine. I don't spend a lot of time with him, but I know him. I really care about this guy. He's a genuine dude. And when you told me he was part of this specific demographic that I really just didn't like, and for good reason, it made me have mercy. Right? Or think about mercy differently. Like, oh, wow. Okay. Here's this guy who's part of this demographic who I really like him. And he's made some mistakes in his life, but he's come back from that. And God has grace and mercy for all of us. And so here's this group of people that I thought were unredeemable. And God had to teach me mercy about that. So like I said, you asked me for one, I'm like, there's multiple. And that goes back to this incident with the this organization that rejected me, having mercy would be understanding that they rejected me, but everybody else in that organization doesn't even know about me.
Yeah.
Didn't even have an opportunity to reject me.
Right.
So I can't just give up on them and quit. I have to keep pushing forward.
And Aaron, I know both you and I have lost several soldier battle buddies to suicide. Okay. And though this organization, in all essence, rejected your app in the moment, it also triggered the idea for them to create their own.
Mm-hmm.
And if you think back to one of your battle buddies that took his life, and if you were to know that there could have been an app created by who cares, but an app that was created that could have saved his life in the moment, would it have still been worth it, regardless of where that app came from?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it would have been.
So I wonder, I'm just in listening to you, how many lives are going to be saved because you've introduced this idea of the app to this organization who has the funds and the research and all those things to create, to copy your app and create it. And how many lives are going to be saved because you introduced it to them?
Yeah, I guess I didn't think about it that way.
Right. And like the righteous justice in me is like, heck no, we should have gotten a patent or something. Right. But at the end of the day, I know your heart is to save people's lives. And though certain people are going to have to answer for certain decisions that they make, the end goal is to save people's lives. And I don't believe that them rejecting you has gotten in the way of that. I believe it's opened a door for many, many soldiers' lives to be saved.
It's a good perspective.
Cool. Any questions for me?
No.
About that process?
No, I didn't cry. So I'm 1 for 1.
Nope. 1 for 2.
1 for 2.
We're at a 50-50 rate right now.
Yes, you're right.
I got to work harder next time. I do not want to see you cry.
Math for Marines, guys. All right, guys. Well, that's it for us here. Your hour with the mental health janitors. Jess, it has been fantastic to work with you.
Thank you.
Really like this dynamic. I like being able to talk about these tools and then they get to see them utilized right here. Mm-hmm. And I like that I don't really know exactly what's going to happen.
It's fun.
It makes it more dynamic, I think. And you guys get a lot more raw, real experience instead of this hyper scripted, banter back and forth. It really is just raw. We have some talking points that we're going to talk about, and then we just go for it. Jess has her notes because she wants to make sure she hits all these things. I try and break down that knowledge for you guys and make it into small compartmentalized pieces that you can be able to absorb. Really just translating all of this, psychobabble. No, I'm just kidding. You translate all of this, high level talk about the brain and functions and operations and try and break it down so that way average people can really understand and absorb it.
Exactly.
So. All right. Well, that is it for us here at the Mental Health Janitors. Thank you guys for joining us. And remember, you want an E3. And so what are your E3? We've educated you on this really cool technique. We have empowered you to be able to take this tool and use it with your friends and family and come back next week. And we're going to encourage you with another tool that you can use to help those around you.
Awesome.